Hello everyone, I'm Mark Eaton, Clinical Psychologist, here with another episode of SOAR. Now SOAR is an acronym that stands for Salutations, Observations, Appreciations, and Recommendations. So I'm going to be using those 4 words as strategies to help you and myself cope during this extended lockdown that we have in South Africa. So let's start with salutations. Salutations are merely a fancy word for hellos. So think about your hellos that you've had pre-COVID-19. I'm sure that they were very, very different to how they are currently. Now, this is an opportunity for us to refine our salutations, to really get deeper in terms of the hellos that we express, and also listening for the answers. You know, often social media and being involved in emails and WhatsApp messages and SMSs, text messages, that's come under a lot of scrutiny of late, saying that there is a social distancing and a lack of social skills that have emanated as a result. And while, of course, this time right now, we are using more social media and social platforms to connect via video than ever before, this is the time when we need to really look at the quality of our hellos. So when I say that, think about often how you would ask someone, "How are you doing?" Common response would be, "Fine, thank you, and you?" This is a time that we really need to learn to go deeper. So go ahead and ask the hello and how are you doing. But then when the person gives their platitudes and quick glib responses, I think this is the time to say, "How are you really doing?" And then carefully listen for the response. And you know what, sometimes even a third question, similar question, same question, repetitive question, is, "Tell me, how are you really doing right now?" It's at a time like this that we need to really try to refine our way of connecting. We need to have empathy for others. And so in a way, this is an opportunity for us to be able to learn new skills, to be able to learn how to connect with our colleagues, to connect with our teams, to connect with those that work with us. And in fact, I don't know if you've noticed, but of late, I've been seeing how colleagues, how teams, how people have really just been connecting and opening up on a much more personal way, superseding just that purely professional contact that they have. It doesn't really mean that it undermines the professional contact. In fact, I think it adds a whole lot more quality and quantity to the communication that is happening these days. And so if there's anything that we can take from this opportunity, it's to be able to pause, to stop, to ask those hello type questions and how are yous in a way that helps us to get deeper, more meaningful connections. So as leaders, as parents, as family members, as friends, we can use this opportunity. Ask those questions. You've got the time. Listen carefully. And if there was ever a time that people needed to have an empathic and understanding response and a kind listening ear, it is now. So use this opportunity to connect. Use this opportunity to grow in your ability to be congruent, to listen for congruence in the other, and reflect back how you see that they are doing. You may need to be encouraging them to take the opportunity, but use your hellos in a very meaningful and wise way. And in this way, this is going to help us survive, not only now during this lockdown, but when we go back into the world of work, into the world of business, into the world of interacting with teachers, with other parents, with colleagues. So that's one of the ways we can survive. Refine your hellos. Okay, now in terms of my observations as a clinical psychologist, I've honestly been noticing a lot more anxiety in my clients as I've been interacting with them over this lockdown period. It's inevitable and it's real. And I think we need to start out by acknowledging that if anyone did not have some anxiety or worry at this point in time, their heads are probably in the sand right now. So it's important, if you as a parent are listening, if you as a CEO of a company, or if you as a principal of a school are listening, and in any leadership position, I think it's important to acknowledge and name it. Name the fact that we are going through a crisis right now. Name it and be upfront about it. Because if we don't, that's incongruent. And how can people trust their leaders and their superiors and their trusted advisors if they are not being upfront and honest? However, how do we deal with that anxiety? How can we meaningfully manage our time in lockdown so that we can survive this ordeal? Well, I think it comes down to structuring. That's one of the most important things that you can do right now, is to take the time to structure your day. Take the time to structure your day in a meaningful way. And when it comes to that worry, a useful strategy is to actually identify and allocate worry time. So now what do I mean by that? Well, it's inevitable that we're going to be worrying anyway, and so often psychologists would recommend what's called a paradoxical intervention, where we prescribe the symptom that people are presenting with. And I'm certainly noticing that a lot in the clients that I've been interacting with lately. So I do suggest to them that they identify a time during the day, and if necessary, one in the morning and one at night time, where they can set aside half an hour of worry time. So in that time, I encourage them to take out a piece of paper and actually actively worry. They need to write the things down. They need to really spend the full time of 30 minutes that they allocate to that time to really enumerating and recording what their worries are, all of the what ifs and the yes buts and the questions that they have and the anticipatory type anxieties that they are negotiating right now. So now why do we do this? Well, again, it's real that there are going to be some things to worry about. So we need to overt them. We need to get them out, put them on paper. Once one can concretize them in writing, it gives people more control. It gives people more objectivity. It gives people more of an idea that they can plan and try and solve some of the problems that they're dealing with. However, it also provides us a boundary that after that half an hour of worry time, we need to then get up, close that book, close that notepad, and move on and go and do a different activity. And again, I would suggest that that activity be structured ahead of time so that they know what they're going to go and do. And, often an important part of mitigating depression and anxiety symptoms is to make sure that you schedule mastery time as well as pleasure time. So now what that means is, pleasure makes sense. Do something that's fun. Do something that you enjoy. Do something that brings a smile to your face. And yes, you don't have to feel guilty at this point in time for enjoying yourself, for having a laugh, for introducing humor. In fact, it's therapeutic. You need to mitigate dropping into a depression or into a bottomless pit of worry. And the mastery exercises, really that means doing things that are not necessarily inherently pleasurable, but they need to be done. So write your lists down, tick off the list what you need to do, and get going with those activities. It's important to try and get out of your own head and to look around and do the things that you need to be doing in your household. And Similarly, you could also structure time to not only worry about your current situation and your family situation, but you can start to cast your mind to thinking about others. So set some time to think about them, set some time to pray for them. By getting yourself out of your own focus, your own absorbed black hole, you need to project yourself out into the world. Start thinking of the friends out there, the family in different parts of the world, what they are doing. Think about them, pray for them, connect with them, phone them, say your hellos, ask how they are doing, because you need to try and get some variety of structure within your day. Structure, of course, gives you routine. So if you can look at your daily structure and have a look what is missing and put into that important things that are caring for you, that are caring for your mind, body, and spirit, so that you can be as rounded as you can on the other side of this lockdown. Now, again, I do want to warn that this isn't necessarily a time for you to be competing with others, so that on Facebook or on Instagram you can outperform your neighbors and outperform your friends and family with the best meal that you've prepared or the best craft that you've done. If you do those things and you inherently love doing those things and it brings you pleasure and there are certain things on your to-do list that you need to get done, do that. But also, you need to structure your time so that you avoid obsessing looking at other people's social media, which is another one of the recommendations that I've been making lately. Turn it off. Structure time that you're doing other things and actually turn off the news, turn off the social media. There is a place for getting important updates, but please do it from credible sources. I'm finding from my clients that they're really getting absorbed in a lot of fake news sometimes and not really knowing how to discriminate between what is real, what is useful, and what is fake and really scaremongering tactics. So that's not to say that there aren't scary things happening out there, but I know that news is often misrepresented when it's not coming from a credible source. And the news often have an agenda, and the people that report often have their own perceptions or their own limited facts. So please guard your hearts and guard your minds. Get relevant information at a useful interval, not every day, not every moment of the day. It is just going to lead to fatigue, it's going to lead to anxiety, and it's going to be triggering that fight, flight, or freeze response. And under these circumstances of extended lockdown, it's often going to be freeze. Sadly, the fight response might be increased, and we're actually finding that there are statistics of domestic violence that are going up. Also, people with the fright response, we're finding that there's going to be a lot of people that are suffering with obsessive compulsive type symptoms, even PTSD symptoms. And there are research results from previous studies after similar world crises and terrorism acts that sadly point to the fact that there will be many people having residual anxieties from this trauma. But that's why it's so important that we connect with people. We encourage them to have a healthy structure during their day. So now what about appreciation? Again, I think a really important thing to appreciate is the fact that we can appreciate certain things during this time. What I appreciate is going to be different to what you appreciate. But please take the time. Start a gratitude journal. Think about the things that you appreciate. And one of the things could be the fact that you yourself have gone through difficult times in the past. You've endured tragedies, you've endured traumas. How have you navigated those? What enabled you to get through those difficult times? What qualities allowed you to be successful and survive during those times? You see, those are important questions, and we need to ask ourselves those questions, because sometimes we get so preoccupied with the here and the now and the what-ifs of the future that we forget that we have successfully navigated very difficult and trying times in the past. So remember those, appreciate those. And in fact, as parents with young children, try to tell your children that you have gone through difficult things in the past and you've successfully navigated and negotiated those. Why? Because for the children, they have never gone through anything like this before. Hopefully they've never endured a significant trauma in their life. But they need to hear that you have gone through something, that there was a beginning, a middle, and an end to that which you went through. And this is so important. In fact, I'm reflecting on the fact that when my first child was born, and he was rather colicky, and we had very, very limited sleep, I honestly asked myself, will this ever end? And thankfully it did. And I think that 9 months was a little bit of a tipping point where things started to get a lot better. But when my second child was born, those initial days and weeks were trying, not so trying as the first. But I think a large reason for that was also knowing that there was a beginning, a middle, and an end to that difficult phase. Now, of course, those of you with children know that there are many different phases that they go through. And I think that's something that I'm going to be covering in subsequent episodes, is that children at different developmental phases of their life show different traumas. They have to battle with different tasks. And so the children that you have right now, at the ages that they are at, they have different needs. And we're going to be covering those in subsequent episodes. However, the general point at this point in time is to appreciate that you have life experience, that you've gone through things, that you have come out of the other side stronger, more empowered, having learned something. Share that with your children. Something else I was thinking about, just in terms of an appreciation, because this lockdown is essentially there for everyone's benefit. It's there to flatten the curve. And what does that mean? Well, I'm sure you've heard about flattening the curve, and that's to try and mitigate that there's going to be a whole host of exponential cases of positive virus sufferers that are going to overwhelm the health services. Now, I was just thinking about that flattening the curve is a visual analogy. It's a visual metaphor. And some people get it, some people understand it. But some people may not understand the visual graphic of what a graph looks like and how that might help. And so I was thinking, being a musician myself, a metaphor and an analogy that would work for me would be to reduce the tempo. And this is why we're in lockdown, is to reduce the tempo and reduce the number of people that are going to fall ill in the subsequent days and weeks. And in fact, I want to give an appreciation to Bono, the lead singer of the band U2. I was fortunate enough to be able to attend the Live 8 concert in 2005 in London, and I saw many, many different bands there, and U2 was one of them. And Bono did a little advert and input where he was really petitioning the plight of poverty and how many African children were dying of poverty-related circumstances. And he used this analogy. he clicked his fingers and he said, every 3 seconds a child dies in Africa. And so that's what I was thinking about, is we actually need to reduce the tempo, because if we don't, that tempo, that click is going to get faster and faster. And so we really need to do everything that we can to try and mitigate that. Hence, trying to turn your mind to realizing the reason why we are in lockdown. So appreciate that. If we can appreciate it, we can understand it, and we can tolerate it a lot better. So now let's go to recommendations. There are so many recommendations from a cognitive behavioral perspective on how we can navigate this lockdown and survive it stronger on the other end. From a behavioral point of view, we are restricted. We're not allowed to go out unnecessarily. We're meant to stay indoors. We're not able to buy the things that we would usually buy. We're not able to go to school. We're not able to go into work. So there are many, many restrictions. However, just because there are behavioral restrictions, it doesn't mean that we have to have mental or spiritual restrictions. We can utilize this time for positives. We can utilize this time as a way to come out of this stronger. However, it does take a choice. We need to choose. We need to take stock that having a attitude that is resistant to the lockdown is going to preclude us owning that which we can and working on that which we can. So what I wanted to say is, from a cognitive behavioral perspective, I'm mindful that there is the concept of learned helplessness. So let me tell you a little bit about that to explain. A psychologist called Martin Seligman developed this concept of learned helplessness. And there are 3 cognitive themes that tend to predominate, that lead to that sense of learned helplessness. The first is taking things personally. So I've been hearing that in some of my client interactions lately, that they feel like this is all happening to me right now, and why does it always happen to me? Why now? It feels like I'm being punished. The next one is one of pervasiveness. So it's not only situational and limited, it's like everything is going wrong. This virus, this situation has robbed them of everything. And that is often an overgeneralization and an overextension of the truth, which needs to be challenged. And this is what I'm going to get to, is we need to be able to cognitively challenge that which are irrational beliefs and cognitive errors. So let me tell you the third one. The third one is the permanence. People are feeling like this is going to go on forever. And when something is permanent, when something is taken up so personally that it seems to constrain a person's identity, and also if a person believes that this that we are in now is so pervasive, they have no power to address it, those 3 factors contribute to a person sinking into passivity. And the more that occurs, the more that they are going to feel helpless and drop into an episode of clinical depression. And this is what we see in people with depression, is it's a fatalistic, hopeless pit where they are helpless. However, what I want to remind you, and what I want to say quite quickly, is that the helplessness is is a perception. It's not real. And if one can start to challenge those 3 P's that we referred to, those being the personal attributions, the pervasiveness of the situation, and the permanence of the situation, then one can lead to a different result. One can lead to more agency, more hopefulness, more overcoming, and again, ultimately surviving this lockdown. So we need to turn the personal into the situational. We need to realize that everyone in the world is in this situation right now. It's not because they have inherently themselves done anything wrong. They themselves are not getting punished. God is not punishing them, but it's a situation, and it's a situation that is real, but we need to look at it and look at ways that we can navigate it positively. Similarly, the pervasiveness, it isn't affecting every aspect of your life. And I acknowledge that for some people, as I'm hearing more and more every day, different aspects, significant aspects of their life are being negatively affected, whether it be concern for loved ones that are getting sick, concern for loved ones that are stuck in various parts of the world and cannot get back, whether it be because of financial concerns, whether it be because of making leadership decisions that are really going to impact on many of their employees. So there is an abundance of things that one can worry about, but we need to have a look at chipping away, not seeing it as a pervasive blanket, that there is absolutely no area in which you have got agency and in which you have got some positive contribution to make. This is when you as a leader, you as a parent, you as a teacher, you as a principal, you as a businessman, you as a psychiatrist, you as a psychologist, a social worker, as a nurse, as a doctor, as a leader in your church, you need to stand up and you need to lead with congruence and with realism but positive encouragement over this time. We need you. We need you to help us all get through during these times. Everyone needs guidance, and in fact, this is not a time to hold back on simple guidance. We see from other terrorist attacks and other traumas that have happened in the world that people during these times, they need practical advice. They need simple, practical advice. Why? Because when a crisis happens, the neurology, the brain, it goes haywire. And so it gets into that fight, flight, or freeze response. And often a simple guidance or direction can push a person into activity. So don't hold back. This is not the time to hold back on connections, on checking in with people. And yes, I know that there is a lot out there of social media that's claiming to know what the best advice is for you right now. I know, and it can get quite tiring, but at the same time, how do you know that that family member of yours, or that friend of yours, or that client of yours hasn't isolated themselves and isn't needing that encouragement from you? Maybe they just need to hear from you, and they need to see that you are doing your best under these trying circumstances. So use your power, use your words, connect, reach out, carry on doing it, be continually upbuilding and encouraging other people. Reach out. Remind yourself it's not pervasive, and remind yourself it's not permanent. This is going to go on for a little while longer, hence the extended lockdown. But it's certainly not going to be a permanent circumstance. However, I do think there are going to be some permanent changes that are going to happen in society, in the world of business, and I really would like to try and capitalize on that for the good of humanity. This is a time when we need to be exceedingly human, we need to be creative, we need to innovate, and I think that a lot of positivity will come out of this, particularly if you survive this lockdown and this period of time successfully, if you apply your mind, challenge the personal, pervasive and permanent cognitions that would want to drag you down into depression and anxiety. So, in summary, let's think about those 4 strategies and just finalize how we can survive. So, from a salutations point of view, say hello, ask people how they are doing, and truly, truly connect, have empathy, show them that you're there for them, help encourage and nurture them to be real in their interactions with you. Use this time to communicate, to inculcate a skill of communication that is genuine, that is warm, that is caring, that is kind. All the fruit of the Spirit that we really want to see emanating out of this time of hardship. It's what people need, it's what we need to be receiving as well. And if you're not getting it, please ask. Please have the wherewithal to ask and tell people that you're needing some encouragement, that you're needing some prayer. That's what we need to do in this time. So that's the salutations. From an observational point of view, as I mentioned, lots of anxiety on the go. We need to observe ourselves, observe our routine and our structure for the day, and choose healthier structures. Schedule some worry time so that it doesn't bleed into the whole of our day. Schedule positive time where you can do things of a mastery nature, ticking off the box of things that you need to do on your to-do list. Pleasurable activities so that you can have fun, meaningful fun and happy times during this tragedy and crisis that we're going through right now. And structure your time not only thinking about yourself and your worries. In fact, the Bible also says that we mustn't worry about tomorrow. We've got enough things to worry about today. So just focus on the things that you have today. Structure that worry time for yourself. Pray about it. Think about others. Pray for them. Get yourself out of your own shoes for a second. Think about others that are more fortunate, less fortunate, others that need you, and reach out to them. From an appreciation point of view, really appreciate that which you have gone through and navigated in the past. Remind yourself of that. You've got qualities that enabled you to succeed before. Share that with yourself, share that with your children, share that with your families. Share an optimism. And again, use whatever metaphors and analogies that you find helpful to spread the word, to encourage people to turn their mind while in this lockdown period, not to fight against it, but to work with it. There's a difference between being willful and willing. So let's not be willful, where we are grinding our teeth against the authorities that have put this in place. We need to be willing. We need to be accepting, but turning our minds so that we can utilize this opportunity to do something at home that is going to benefit us and others. So from a recommendation point of view, remember, fight, flight and freeze are natural reactions when there is an increased stress response and an outpouring of cortisol, which is the stress hormone in the body. But we need to limit that. We need to challenge the cognitions that are going to really get us stuck into a freeze mode and lead to learned helplessness. We need to challenge those personal attributions. We need to challenge the sense of pervasiveness and permanence. This is situational. This is time limited. And it's not going to affect every area of your life in a negative fashion. It's going to shape the future in various ways, but let's make that future positive.